Okay. All right, so we're going to get started very soon. I'm going to get started in about 5 minutes, creatives. All right, creatives, so I'm going to get started in just a few minutes. I'm just sending out the email. I'm going to, hopefully you guys, Masterclass students, you have your reference out and you're looking at your reference. We're going to really refer to that a lot. So this is part 2 of the Saluki painting. I'll be, part 1 is located in the Masterclass in the live paintings tab. And I just want to go through the colors that I have. I have my violet, I have raw sienna, of course I have my white, and yellow ochre. Okay, and this is a Saluki puppy. There's going to be some beautiful curls that we're going to add and little accents of violet. We're also going to add a little daisy in the upper left corner here. And then very unique wispy hair around the neck and the rest of the body. So we'll finish that up today. And I just want to wish you all, mothers of all kinds, happy Mother's Day weekend. I hope this adds to this weekend, makes it more fun and colorful. So I just sent the email out. We're going to get started very soon. I'm a little on the early side just to be sure. Last time I had a few technical issues. I wanted to avoid that. So I'm going to make sure I link it down below, but this is part 2 of a Saluki puppy painting. And Masterclass students, I really recommend you pull up the reference so you can see the kind of details we'll be adding to the curly fur on these adorable floppy ears. The materials list is also in the Masterclass and the class notes. Don't want to lose my music. All right, creatives. So how we doing? Where are you tuning in from? Here in Illinois, it's about 10:50. So we'll start shortly. I'm a little early, but where are you watching from? I'm curious. And I'm also interested, what are you doing for Mother's Day weekend? Are you chilling out, doing something relaxing like this painting, or you have other plans? So this is going to be a great lesson on long curly fur. I just want to point out the brushes that I'm really going to use a lot of. I'm going to be using my size 8 liner brush, my 2/0 round brush, and my size 1 liner brush. These are all like ideal for painting curls and making sure our lines are nice and clean. And once again, I'll go through my colors. I have violet, raw sienna, and yellow ochre. And I'm going to start painting. Got my palette knife here. Okay. When it comes to painting curls, curly fur, there's so many layers of fur that we have to start reasonably dark, like pretty darn dark, even if you have light fur. So that's why instead of a dark brown, I'm going to actually use violet and raw sienna. This makes a really beautiful, rich brown with those hints of purple. Let me know if the music's too loud. I'm going to turn it down slightly. Okay, so this is going to be our base color. I'll mix up our medium and light values. I always want to have at least a dark, a medium, and a light value. And that's with raw sienna and purple. Okay, next I'm going to pick up raw sienna and yellow ochre. So that's raw sienna and yellow ochre. For our medium value, we're going to be using lots of these two colors, by the way, so make sure you have enough raw sienna and yellow ochre on your paint palette. I'm going to pick up some of that, and I'm going to add some white to it. Okay, so that had yellow ochre and raw sienna in it. I added white. I'm going to add a little bit more raw sienna and yellow ochre to that. Now this technique that I'm going to be applying to this curly fur flop ears is wet and wet. So I want to remind you to work at a steady pace so that we can be blending and layering at the same time. We'll be doing those two things. I'm going to add more raw sienna to my paint palette because these are our core colors, and I'll be pulling in more raw sienna as we go along. All right, so very simply, I'm going to fill in. I don't have a whole lot of area here. If I was doing the body, I'd probably use a smaller brush just to get the different variations in value. But we're just going to cover this whole ear with our base and then work into it wet. So I have my size 8 cat's tongue brush, and very simply going in with our dark value here of our violet and raw sienna, I'm going to paint it in. Now, layering in the fur is a long process. I think that's why artists get so frustrated with curly fur, it doesn't look right for a very long time. Like it just takes a lot of building up those layers, and you really just have to trust it. Now, I'm not going to bring this all the way down here, but close to it, because this is where the fur is cutting over top the background and on this chest area. So I'll kind of just work around the inside, leaving a bit of white. And then what I'll do is, after I paint this in, add some of this color. That way we can nicely transition to those lighter strands. So we're not fighting to paint over a dark brown line. Does that make sense? Now I find this breed so unique. Like I just feel like I don't see that many Saluki dogs, but it always makes me think of 101 Dalmatians, the Saluki in that movie. They're such a beautiful, unique breed. Now, because here it's getting hit by that light source, I'm not going to have my brown go up there. I'm going to actually work below that. All right, so like I said, I'm going to get pretty darn close, but still leaving a bit of white outline. And then I'm going to go into our medium value. And just so I don't have that dark brown on the outside, I'm going to add a blend in over top that white with this medium value. And I'm using the tip of my brush. I would only apply this technique to the ears, floppy ears. I wouldn't do this. I would rarely do this any other time. I'm blending up, okay? So it's darker in here where we have the bulk of those thick curls, and where it gets lighter, that's why I'm adding this medium value. I'll also bring it down a little further than I did. I don't want to leave any white. And I am going over that white at the top, but also using the point of this cat's tongue brush to cut in over top the background. All right, so I'll go to about there and fill in that part. I have a thick, clumpy brush. I don't want that paint to dry to it, so I'm going to wash it off, get it nice and clean. Keeping it damp, I'm going to pat it damp, not dry, and go back in with my medium value to paint this in. Okay. Now, because I will likely have little strands coming down here, I want to prep this area around the neck. I'm going to mix up a combination of the medium value with the dark value to get like an in-between dark to medium value. I'm testing that out. Is it dark enough? No. So I'm going to add in more of my dark value and carefully working it underneath that side of the lip, the mouth, in this little pocket here, which I can manage to get because of this point that this brush has. I'm just prepping. I lost a bit of my ear, but that's okay. I still see a bit of the traceable, but I'm just prepping it for when we add that fur there after we do the ear. and any of the curls that come over top there. So that's what I'll do in that area. Okay, I'm going to wash up my brush and set it aside. And so I tend to recommend we do our larger brushes and then slowly get smaller. So we're going to go to our size 1 liner brush to create both the single lines and the clumps of the curls. Okay. So while that's wet, I'm going to go in with my size 1 liner brush and start creating these clumps of the curls, and also making sure that they're flowing in the correct direction. So they're more vertical down here, but right around here, they're kind of at an angle. And then they're a bit more horizontal right here. Okay, so I'm just going to start with those main ones, and you're going to get some blending, and that's good. That's what we want. I'm using my medium value for this. There's going to be overlapping, but I'm making these thicker clumps that are curling. I'm going to start in the center and then work around that. See how I'm making these waves, these wavy lines, but making them thicker, and I want there to be some blending going on between the bottom layer of brown and this slightly lighter medium value. Now, sometimes you're just going to have the side of that curl like this. I'm making some that are coming out from underneath those curls that I just made. And then sometimes you'll see the full curl, especially like right along where it joins with the face. You'll see a bit more. So I don't want to see this dark brown line here. We don't want to see that. So to get rid of that, I'm going to have some overlapping lines that overlap that brown, but also feed into the curls that we're building up. And like I said at the beginning, this is going to look so weird for a long time. And it's why I think a lot of artists struggle with this, because they give up too soon. It really is a lot of layer after layer, but slowly building up from dark to light. I'm pressing down on my brush so that I can create these clumps, these thicker curls. And I'm not going to use this color to go out too much into the background, just a few in a few areas. Because I kind of want it to be more light, but I will still do it in some. Okay, now the fur over here, I want to use this medium value to join these two areas, covering up some of that white. I'm going to be doing some curls up there too, so that's why I want to also include that. Just washed off my brush. Being that we're using a detail brush, it's very easy to get a lot, like leave too much water on there and then have it drip. So just be aware of that so you're not going back to your canvas and then adding too much water to those curls. So like I said, I'm going to pull some of those wispy curls coming up like that at the top. Just getting those clumps in first, allowing this medium value to blend with some of that brown. So that's why I kind of want to work at a good pace so that down here where I haven't applied paint yet, it's not dry there and then it looks brighter. But there's a way around that. I can just pull in more of this brown that we used for the base. There's a lot of people in my neighborhood doing their lawn right now, so if you're hearing the lawnmower, that's why they're getting early and a jump start on their lawn this weekend. Such a lovely day. What's the weather like where you guys are? Let me know where you're watching from. And happy early Mother's Day. I hope you guys, you moms of all kinds, have a wonderful day today. All right, so I'm working my way down. And being that we use the medium value to connect or to blend at this area, I'll just carry it down, adding those lines into the background that are almost vertical. Okay, I still have that wave, but they're not at an angle like here. And when it starts to get thick and create lines that are too thick, that's when you got to wash off your brush. That's an important step for these curls. I love this song. All right, so then I'm going to go back now. So I worked the majority of this ear. I'm going to go back with this color before that base dries and get in those single lines, okay, that are going in different directions. So those aren't as those thick clumps. Those are the lines that are right next to those clumps that are a bit thinner. Once again, I'll still pull some out into the background. Adding a bit of a curl at the end. Very beautiful, beautiful curls. Now watch me as I take, again, just like I did up here, I'm going to join that curl with this medium value. I'm going to now connect it to the top. Yeah, you really just don't want to go too light too soon. just so it really gives that depth in these curls. All right, so my next step is to get a bit lighter. And I'm going to use my size 0 liner brush now. All right, I'm actually going to, for the next color, is just a mix of these two. This is a medium to light value. And I'm going to pull in a little bit of both. That's our light value with some of our yellow ochre and raw sienna mix that we made, our medium value. This is what I mean when I will say medium to light value. It's kind of a combo of the two, and that's what we'll use for the next set of curls. So for this next step, what I'm doing is going over with finer lines some of the clumps that we already applied and carefully adding more. All right, make sure my brush is clean and damp. By now, this is pretty much dry, so now it's layering. And I want to test it out to make sure it's not too light. See, that's a little too light, so I need to work backwards a little bit and mix up some of, I'm just going to pull in raw sienna. Okay, I'm going to pull in raw sienna into that color. Now it does dry darker, but just seeing how light that is, that's just too much of a jump. I'm going to test it out in an area right next to it, and that's good. That is good. So the key is not just making a bunch of lines, because where they go into another curl that's overlapping, it's darker. Okay, so I'm trying to get a lot of the curls and keep some of the other part, the trough, darker. And that's up to you to define which part of the curl that you want darker, which part you want lighter. And we can always paint over it. And with these colors, if there's curls that you don't like, if it didn't turn out all right, you can easily fix it. It's not ruined if your curls don't look just right at this phase, because it sure does take a while for them to surface. See how I'm not applying this to every single line, but where a lot of the curls are, and then down here where it goes like that, that's where it's darker. Now, because of our light source hitting this upper left, this whole area is going to be much lighter. These are going to get a lot of light. But I'm going to really take note to where I want those curls to overlap. See how I did that? I created 2 lines over top that clump, another line in front of it, and then it's going to go in and get a bit darker down there. Okay, I'm going to make sure this is highlighted where it connects to this top. So I'm gonna try and see if I can keep this darkness here and add a bit more of a curl. See, I'm kind of adding more lines, but I'm gonna try and designate that as a dark area. This is gonna be lighter. You have to be so intentional with every single line. So I'm going over those clumps again, and I'm making single lines in between some of those areas, like right here. Oh, I want to create a nice curl in there, in that gap. But we don't want to cover up all the gaps. But we do want to make this kind of thick, curly fur. Now you see I'm kind of doing twos, repeating twos. That's not really on purpose. I'm going to actually go more than just two in an area, in some areas. Like right here, I'll add one curling down and around. I find this really relaxing. You're repeating the same thing over and over again, and it can be almost like a puzzle. It's very fun. I like this. All right, so I'm going to pick up down here. Notice I'm only applying, can you see it? Only applying just a little bit of paint to the end of my brush. I'm not filling my whole brush with paint. Makes the process way harder when you do that. I'm actually overlapping the face a bit. Along here. And then I'm going to trail off some of these curls to just much longer wavy lines than we have up here because they're not as being covered up. They're coming to an end. I don't know if you noticed, but I'm using this hand to prop my other hand up so I can work down. I'm not working this way. I want my brush to be up and down to get this technique right. Now we will be revisiting after this step the dark values, so just make sure you keep those damp. Because you can see as it's drying, there's little white, very thin areas exposed that I want to make sure I paint in. So I am going over those lines on the outside with this color. Some areas you'll just see the side of a curl like I did just there. And this looks so dark now, but because we had so many layers, that's what makes it look more blonde. This is also why it's so important to mix up your colors ahead of time. That way you know that you can gradually go from dark to light. There's a bit more of a gap here than I want, so I'm actually going to go back to this medium value, add some more in. It's dried there, so it's going to look a little too light. It's a little, that's better. It's, if I'm not pushing down too hard. There's just a bit more, I just want to add a bit more of the medium value there before I get it a little lighter. And then I'll go back to this one and lighten it up. And you'll notice as you do this, you'll apply some lines and then you'll go to a different area and then you'll look back and you'll just, I'm shocked how dark those are, but that's just acrylics for you. It just dries quite a bit darker than what we're seeing while it's wet. Okay, I really want to make sure I get some overlapping. And not too much dark brown left over. All right, so before my dark brown, it shouldn't dry because I have quite a bit left, but if you don't have much mixed up, we got to get on that. We're going to add in, revisit our darks. I just washed off my liner brush. This is my size 0 Arteza liner brush. And I'm going to add in some more of those darks, get them a little richer. Not all of them, actually. I'm not doing all of it, just where I know that I'm going to have it being dark. And if you don't like a specific line, maybe it just doesn't look quite right, you can paint over that with this color and try again. Now look at me as I'm at the bottom. I'm going down in between these curls. Okay. That's something we haven't done yet. I don't have all my curls in that area, but I don't want it to be all light where it doesn't make sense as it connects to the neck. Going down in between those lines. Still using my dark value. This is, if you're just joining, this is Violet and Raw Sienna that we applied for our base, and we're revisiting this value so we can cut in between. Excellent. Add a little bit more there, and then I'll move on. I'm still working this color next, okay? I'm still going back to this to add those single lines. Taking them out into the background. And then wherever they overlap, that's where I also want to get it. Make sure that stands out. Almost resembles spaghetti right now. Spaghetti hair. I'm gonna soon be going a little bit lighter, adding a bit more of a lighter value. But I just want to make sure that I have a lot of that brown, not covered up entirely, but lines over in that area to push those curls to the back. And that's what I said at the beginning. I think creatives get frustrated with this fur because they don't take enough time to really build up slowly. Okay, I'm actually working a little higher than I have been because this brush is, I'm just setting down a bit of a base for the very light strands that we add in a few steps from now. See how I did that? I brought just single lines. They're not really curls, they're kind of wispy hairs that are sticking up. Excellent. All right, so that is where next we're going to add in a little bit more of our light value to this color. I'm going to pull it up here and add some more of our light value so we can get it just a smidge lighter. All right, same thing, guys, same thing, but really making sure our lines are pretty and clean. Oh, hi, Desiree. Oh, I'm so glad it's helpful. This is, I think, the first of its kind where it's over the floppy ears, and I hope it's like Gonna help you with both kind of techniques. I'm glad it's helpful. So what I'm doing is where I am having those curls get the most amount of light, that's where I'm gonna isolate these highlights. I'm not gonna be adding any of those single lines like I did with that color, okay? I'm just gonna be carefully highlighting the ones I've already added. There's some wispy lines up here that that I will be adding single strands of. But for the most part, we're just going over our work on the lines, those strands that are getting the most amount of light. Oh no, Gwen, that's awful. Oh, I'm so sorry you've been so sick. Man, I hope you start to feel better. Get out in that sunshine. I hope that you can recover fast for this summer. It's coming up soon. Yeah, I have some really fun summer paintings planned. I'm going to be painting a chinchilla soon. It's the pet of a Masterclass student. It's going to be so fun. And a couple other ones too. Okay, so I'm going to be careful that I don't rest my hand and start smudging my work. Use that hand to prop it up. I'm even like having it underneath my arm to get up here. And with this light value, I am going to go over some of these lines because they're going to get touched by light. Very careful, and be sure to clean that brush regularly. So I want to connect these light values for the face with this color, that they're very similar. And the lines are less wavy up here. Starting to look like that golden curly fur. This bottom layer is pretty much completely dry for me. So then I start to notice that it's a little bit more difficult to glide my brush over top the surface. And so I have to revisit my paint. I have to keep going back a little bit more. And when I do that though, it adds more paint, thicker brush strokes, and I don't want that. So that's a tricky part. Just making sure you add a little bit to the tip of your brush, so you're only using the very smallest little bristles on the end. And then, of course, like I said, washing out your brush in the water. Now it really comes together nicely with this layer because you can see more of the dark values. It pushes them back, those curls, now that we're adding these highlights over top. I want to be careful that I don't make these too light. I want to make this part light and where the hair is sticking up, but it gets a bit darker down here. I'm going up this border with this light value. Now this is where I'm adding a few more single strands. I'm gonna wash off my brush. And I'm noticing that I will have to go back to this color to add a few more hairs in there in between. Oh, I can see it. It's coming along. Oops, see, that was actually a little too light. I'm going to wipe that off. Ooh, I can wipe it off. I didn't have enough paint on my brush, and it didn't look quite right, but I could wipe it right off and try again. So again, just because of that light source coming here, we want to have a good amount of highlighted curls on this side. I'm going to add a few single strands. Alrighty, and then we will go to our lightest value. Okay, and that area is going to get lots of light. The top of these curls, the side, some of the ends with this light value. One line at a time. So you want these to really count, guys. You want to take your time on every single line. I'm moving my lines away from this ear for a second. Oh, and look at me going to the wrong one. I want to go to my light value and cover up this white with short little lines using this light value. Okay, so on this side of the face, they're more up angled there. On this side of the face, we're going to have them go up on that side. So while we're on this color, take a quick break from that ear and making sure that these are much shorter, but still kind of wispy. I'm going to add this light value where it cuts over top the background. And once I get to about here, this is where I recommend you look at your reference Masterclass students and see that this hair is almost sticking straight up and then up and to the left. So carefully with my liner brush, I'm going to add that over top the blue, and it's perfect value too. It's not too light, it's not like white, so that the daisy over top this area will show up, but it's also not darker than that blue. So I'm just covering up that white over there, and then I'll add a few little short strands around it, like that. I will work on that when we are finished with this. So I'm going to go back here with this light value and continue adding more highlights to some of these curls and wispy lines. I'm adding a bit of thickness to some of these clumps. Okay, you see how I'm doing this? I'm not pushing down so it fills up the bulk of it. I'm adding lines, clusters of lines at the ends of those curls. So we want to make sure that these lines are definitely highlighted enough because of that light hitting the top right, top left, sorry. And definitely on the outside here, I don't want to leave any white. Oh, my brush is getting too thick. I just added an extra strand over top the blue. because I don't want to see any brown outline, okay? I want to cover that up with curls. I'm going to thin out this gap right here just with some lines. I just added 2 lines in there just because I don't want it to look like too big of a curl over there. I want it to be covered up. So I'm going to overlap some of those curls over the face. Quite the process, huh? That's why we just have to be so patient. It eventually comes along. So I'm going to wash up my brush and go back to this value right here. It was a mix between our medium and light value, so that I can get once again, in between these dark areas, these dark pockets. Oh, this looks awesome. I'm liking it. All right, creative. So believe it or not, we're not done that ear. We'll go back to it. I'm gonna work on this side and get a base down and do the exact same thing, but the curls going this way and a little bit more extended so they're not as tight. The curls aren't as tight. So let's move on to, I'll go back to my cat's tongue brush again. Size 8 cat's tongue brush, make sure it's clean and damp. Apply the same exact technique, guys, where we started with our base of brown. And just like before, I'm not gonna paint all the way out so that I don't have that weird brown border that I have to cover up. I'm just gonna paint inside here, being careful to get around those eyes. And you know what? That's actually looking too dark. So I'm not gonna fill in the whole thing with that. I'm gonna add some more raw sienna in a separate pile with this brown. Being that it's facing the light source, I don't want it that dark. Getting carefully around this face. And I'm going to be covering this area with a daisy, so I'm just going to paint up until about there. I'm going to add a daisy there later. Okay, now I need to get smaller so I can carefully go around that eye. I'm going to switch to my size 1 liner brush. Carefully underneath that eyelid. In fact, just to play it safe, I'm going to go to my medium value. And because of the values being so similar, I'm going to use this medium value around that eyelash. We'll blend it in with those curls. Perfect. Now continue down with this mix of raw sienna and our dark value. And by the way, if you don't have any more of that medium value, it's just raw sienna and yellow ochre. All right, so then I will go into that medium value and paint in the rest of the white on this left ear. I actually want to go lighter again, so add a bit of light value. I'm just going to pull this aside, add some of the medium value with lots of that light value, and that's what we'll use. Just because of how much light, more light is hitting compared to this ear. I'm blending up a bit. How we doing, guys? You doing okay? Please let me know if I'm going too fast. Gwen, I do hope you feel better. So sorry that you've been ill for so long. I'm adding more of this light value to the top. I want it to be a little bit lighter up here. Okay. And like I said, I don't need to fill that in. I'm going to be adding a daisy over top there. I think the only thing I'll do though, because I just want to be safe with that mixture of raw sienna and the dark value, I just want to make sure that dark value is up high enough, like that. Okay, here we go. So I will continue on with this brush and we'll go to our mix of the light value and medium value. We'll start there. And like I said before, these aren't as curly. They're a bit more straight. And being that I'm right-handed, I'm going to start on this side and pull it in towards the dark brown. That's what I recommend. See, I'm not going all the way down. I'm kind of creating just little curls that cut in towards that eye. And be careful working around that eye. Not too much there that we have to do, less area to paint. So I'll go straight into our mix of this color and that. That was the light value with the mix of our light and medium value. Keeping these darker where it is going in towards that face, I want to make sure the outside now, connect it to the outside with this color. I'm having trouble with this brush, so I'm going to go to my size 0 liner brush. We need something thinner. So we're going to use this value to cut into our blue now. It's like I can do 1 or 2 lines before I have to go pick up more paint. I'm going to have some lines going not just straight down, but up. Okay, facing upwards. Give it more variety, because hair doesn't lay that way. And on to our light value, but guess what? I'm not going to go into that one. I'm going to mix up a lighter one. This is even going to be one that we add to this ear eventually. I'm going to go a bit lighter, adding our lightest value with some more white. I'll even pull in more yellow ochre into that. And lots of white. And all these lines right here, right along here, are going to be very light, are going to have this light value in them. Too much water on my brush. That was a little too thick. That line came out too thick. I just turned it into 2 lines. So again, I'm not going to pull this light yellow in here, just on the outside. Making sure the area where it cuts over top that sky blue background is really thin. I'm adding some extra curls, extra lines over on this side, because I don't want to see a brown like outline here. Thank you, Marty. Thanks. Welcome. And I definitely want to bring, see, I don't want that brown here, so I'm going to use a curl to curl up right above that nose. Kind of draws attention to that cute nose. Now this is a little too dark, so I'm going to go back to this value right here, our mix between the medium and light value with added light value. I'm going to pull them in because I added that lightness. Now I can pull that in a bit more closer to the eye. So I'll go over some of those lines and add more to that area. Just so I keep it looking blonde and not like brown hair. And then I'll go back to that light value and bring it up more. So this lightest value, and bring the highlight up more towards those lines. Sweet. It's looking lovely. I'm really happy with how these curls are turning out. If you see any clumps, you can always go back with the medium value and paint over that. I'll show you what I mean. I'll go to my medium value and I can kind of break up those clumps with the dark or the medium value, because we're going pretty light here on this left side. Now I'm going to add more lines at the end because of the light, so much light hitting here, but being careful that I don't disrupt this line here above the nose. And like I said, why I'm not going over here is because of that daisy. But I'm going to add this stray hair, this stray highlight. Because of that daisy, those petals are they'll be able to see it behind those petals. And now I'm just going to add this light value over top the lines up here on the head. Just going to highlight them carefully. Okay, we want this light. I'm adding some over here too. These are short lines compared to what we've been adding. And back to this ear, I'll add some over here too, in the lightest areas. Now these lines sticking up like this are going to get a decent amount of light. So I'll get that light value there. Now you can wipe some of it off if it's a little too light. That really helps. Getting that lightness at the top of the head really, really helps. Okay, so then we'll move on to that daisy. I can't wait to do the daisy. We're gonna use our violet for that. So let's move to a different brush. I'm gonna use my 2\0 round brush. And so with my violet, I'm gonna add just a little bit of raw sienna to it just so it stays pretty dark, like darker than that. All right, so I'm gonna start with the center of the flower. I'm gonna put it right there over top that white. Start small and then work out. Okay, and then we'll mix up a gray. So I'm gonna add black. I'm gonna add some black to my paint palette so we can mix up a gray. A bit of contrast from all the brown, you know, all the yellows and browns. I won't need much, so I'm just gonna add some white. Purple got on my brush, I don't want that. So white with a tiny bit of black, because I want these to really stand out. But I don't want to use straight white yet. Okay, so making sure there's not too much water or paint on your brush. We're going to use our 2\0 round brush, and I'm just going to one petal at a time, making sure the end of each petal is round. It might help just to create a line and then round out the end and thicken it up. And we'll just do that all around over top the fur. So a line, then round out the top. Covering up any leftover white. I don't want to have too large, excuse me, I don't want to have too large gaps. Between the petals. I want to make sure that they're kind of close. I think I have a frog in my throat. Okay, and I'm going to pull this one down so you can see a bit of that shadow over top the face. Now I'm going to be layering them over top the face. And while those petals are still wet, I'm going to go in with straight white at the top of them, okay? So straight white. I'm even going to lift them up a little higher, make them a little taller, and get the tops. I'm keeping the ends of those petals round and thicker, and pulling them down, but not all the way down. That way they stand up much nicer over top the background and that fur. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. I may have made my petals too widespread, but I wonder if I can squeeze in some more petals. Before I do that, I'm going to go to yellow ochre. I'm just mixing up a little pile of yellow ochre and white. And I'm just going to add a very subtle highlight over top the center of the petal. Dab, 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 just in the center, just to give it a bit more of a highlight. Then I'll go back to my dark value, the one we applied for the center, and blend that. Just a subtle little bit of yellow. Now I wanted to keep a limited paint palette for this painting, but if you want, you can add like a leaf or two coming out from behind there, or you can bulk up the petals like I'm going to do here. I'm going to mix up more of my medium to light gray. Add a few more petals. And then go back over with my white and highlight them. That's a great question. I always make sure I ask. And honestly, most often if it's a female, I've noticed they don't mind at all. They like it. A female pet, I mean. But I will never just do it. I'll always ask them what I'm about to do and tell them my thoughts in like the very beginning when I'm showing them my contract and they're reviewing kind of my steps and how I run things. And I like to try and keep it. A lot of clients also like the fact that it can be kind of a collaborative process where they give some input too, and we're combining our ideas. But then other people don't want to be involved. They don't want to think, and that's okay too. That's great, and that gives the artist a lot more room to be creative? Great question, Gwen. Okay, so we're going to move on to that body now. Very different. We're not going to have, it's such a unique breed. It's so much curly, tight curls around their ears, long, and then a bit shorter, almost thin looking hair around their body. All right, so I'm going to mix up just with my brush, my size 8 cast tongue brush. This is yellow ochre, raw sienna, and some white. I want to keep this kind of dark, so I'll add some bit more raw sienna to it. And I'm going to fill in the back as carefully as I can around that nose. And remember, there is actually a bit of that light value right there, so I'm going to ever so carefully go underneath that and not paint over that. I'm going to have to use my little itty bitty brush to get that little bit of white that I left. There we go. I'm just mixing up some more yellow ochre, but more on the raw sienna side. It has more raw sienna than yellow ochre. Don't forget your sides. All right, so I'm going to start adding in a bit more raw sienna as I move to the right. Because of the dog's head being turned, there's some folds. There's 2 folds that I want to paint in underneath this snout. So that's where I want it to be a bit darker brown. I'm going to add even more raw sienna. And I'm covering up these 3 lines where we're going to add the longer fur, but I want to get a base, so I'm actually going to cover all the rest of the white with this mixture. I'm going to add just a smidge of my dark value, okay? That dark value was violet with raw sienna because I want to join it here and underneath the neck. I'm just pulling that into that color we were just using. And I'm just blending this so that it's a nice gradual fade from dark to light, but not going all the way down. That's where it gets lighter. I'm going to get close just like I did with the ear. I'm going to get pretty close. I'm going to wash off my brush, and I kind of ran out of this color. I want actually that mix of the raw sienna and yellow ochre with more raw sienna in it though. I'm going to come down over top some of that yellow. Notice my brush strokes are actually moving in the direction that I'll be applying the fur. So it's like this on this side, this on that side. Okay, so before this area dries, I want to make sure I add those folds. So I'm going to go in with my medium value. This is actually the medium value. It's the one we were using that's a little bit lighter. It's with the light value and the medium value. And I'm going to paint over that, those two folds around the middle of the snout. They're subtle. Oh, welcome, Donna. Yeah, I know you're on Hawaii time, so it's okay. We get it. Thanks for joining. Now, going into my light value, I actually want to blend a mix between my light value, the same one up here. I want to make sure that it blends while it's wet. This is just that fold of the fur. But while that's wet, I took that line down a little too far. So I'm going back to this mixture of raw sienna, and I actually want to start covering that up with lines that I'll be applying for that wispy hair underneath the neck. Okay, and then I'll go in with a mix between, going a bit lighter, mix between this color and the light value. And very carefully, I'm adding straight lines here now that go down and out like this and are curved in like this over top those folds that we just made. I'm doing a mix between that light value and this one here. And I'm gonna need, see how thick that is? I'm gonna have to go to a thinner brush. My size 0 liner brush is where I'm at. I'll have to thin that out. It's luckily wet, so I was able to thin that out. See, I'm not going all the way up yet. That's actually where I'm gonna have these strands go out this direction. And down. My paint is dry down here, so it's going to require lots of layers so you can actually see it. I'm going to go to my light value, not the lightest one, but that light value that we started with, our core colors, pulling it all the way out over top that white and into the pink background. I'm going to add a bit more of this color right here just to lighten it up. I added some of that with the light value just to lighten up this one, that fold. I want these lines down here to cover up over top the bottom, okay? The bottom of that fold. I'm gonna go to my medium value, okay guys? Oh, it's so dry. So I'm gonna mix up some more of yellow ochre and raw sienna. I'm gonna go up a little higher now, just with very few strands, okay? Just a few. See how they're a bit darker? There, just like that. And then what I'm going to do is bring down these curls over top. I'm going to bring them down. I'm going to bring them down with not our lightest value, but the one we mixed up. It was like a little bit darker than that. And bring these curls over top this area. So much overlap. Always have to think ahead to like what's going to overlap what. And then I'll go back to this area and just add a few more, highlight those lines we just added, make them stand out a little bit stronger. Very carefully, still using my size 0 liner brush, by the way. Then I'll go to my lightest value, okay? Whether it was just yellow ochre and white. Get those highlighted out on the far right where it cuts over the magenta. I'll add just a few very carefully over top these hairs with that light, our lightest value. Now changing areas, we're going to work here with a slightly lighter version of, so we used raw sienna and yellow ochre. I'm going to mix up some more on my paint palette. For this area, I'm going to add more white to it. Not too much white. And I'm going to draw paint lines that don't go all the way up to the nose, okay? This is more on the body. Giving it that texture, just a subtle amount of texture where that light is hitting it on the side. And I'm not going to go all the way to that fold there, but close to it. I'm using the dry brush technique to just add subtle bit of lines right in front of it. I want to keep it more light right here. So I'm adding more of a flat layer over here and then more texture right next to it. Now something that's been bothering me is right here. I want to go back to, there's a bit of a gap there. I want to go in with my raw sienna and yellow ochre to bring that up. And then darken up this lower lip, okay? I just want to darken up with a gray wash. That's what I'm going to use. I'm going to go mix up a medium gray with white, not a wash, a glaze. Always get those two confused. The glaze is going to be where I add more water to this medium gray and very carefully add a bit more darkness right here. I'm gonna add just the tiniest bit more black in there. Oh, too much black. And just add it close to the bottom. You want this so thin so it doesn't cover up all your work, but changes that value. There we go. It's a little bit thin with the paint here, and that's with yellow ochre and raw sienna. I'm gonna make sure that is dark enough so it stands out next to the lighter. So I need more raw sienna. Just gonna add another layer. Dab, 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 not too much though, so I don't lose the texture here. I might need to go back to that, do some blending. This is the yellow ochre raw sienna with added white that we added over top here. And a little bit more white to that, just so it stands out. Just adding a little bit more white to that yellow ochre, raw sienna, and white, and brightening that up with a flat layer right there on the back. Oh my goodness. There you have it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions at all, please leave them in the comments. I'll be sure to link the masterclass down below if you'd like to check out part 1 and do it yourself. Guys, thanks for watching. Happy Mother's Day. Bye.